Welcome back to GearWire.com. This is Jason Donnelly, and in this segment I'd like to show you how to acidize the loops that we created in the previous segment. Alright, so in the previous segment we recorded our MIDI performances in as audio loops. Now I'm going to open them up in SoundForge and just do a little normalizing. It's under the Process tab. Normalize to maximum peak value. You can also run a batch process from this program, but for this demonstration I'm going to do each one manually. Then I also like to check the ends of the files to make sure that they're faded in and out to 0, so that we don't get a popping sound when the loop point meets. Oops, and that looks good. That one's normalized. Normalized. Looks like this channel is a little quieter, so in that case I'll normalize it separately. And that's it. Let's move on to acidizing the loops. So we're about to acidize our loop using a dinosaur app called Sonic Foundry's Acid Pro 2.0. And the reason why I use this to acidize is because the files maintain the metadata across the board for every version of Acid. I've tested it with acidizing loops in newer versions of Acid, and every once in a while it will drop metadata. So this is the most reliable way to acidize a loop. It also shows you right away the tempo, how far off it is from the actual tempo of the project. So if I set this to 90, which is our original tempo, you'll see that the lines are all straight down the middle if I adjust that. And it's just a quick visual way of knowing whether or not your loops are exactly at the BPM that they should be, if they're cut precisely to that BPM. And so we click on the Properties tab, stretch, additional transient detection all the way down, and this is a baseline, so we don't want a whole lot of markers in here. We definitely want to make sure there's one at the beginning of every note. And that would be it for the markers. I believe our key is, it's not the actual key, but it would be the root note to where it would resolve. Would be A sharp. It's different with beats. Obviously you don't need to put in the root note. And a lot of times you can just leave the markers because you can leave many markers in. With percussive loops especially, you don't exactly hear those markers, but in like a bass tone you can hear them. So I would just leave this at this default setting. The only thing I would change is the additional transient detection and turn that all the way off to 0%. Now technically, if you wanted to get really deep, you could go in and place a marker by hand on each hit. But in this case, we don't really need to do that, especially nowadays with the newer versions of Acid. It it handles this data in a much better way, so you really don't have to do this anymore. But it doesn't hurt. And then with the jazzy chords, same thing. I'll probably have just one at the beginning of each note and then one cutting it in half, each note, each sustained note in half. To give it a reference point. And then our key is A sharp. And that's it. Those are acidized loops. In the next segment, we'll recycle the loops. And that'll be it.